All right, we will go ahead and get started. Once again, welcome to our Wednesday webinar from PDSVISION. My name is Michael Wimberly, and we will be covering PDM to PLM. So for this webinar, we'll go through, of course, our general introduction, then, of course, talk about the PDM to PLM transition. What is PDM? What is PLM? The PLM benefits, and then, of course, talk about the transitioning from PDM to PLM, and do, of course, a live demonstration and Q&A. So any questions that you have in your dialog box, there should be a section for questions. You can ask them. Normally, I try to address those at the end of the webinar. So please go ahead and ask any questions that you have, even if it's during the webinar, and then we can more than likely address those at the end of it. So once again, my name is Michael Wimberly. I have been with PDSVISION for over 11 years now. I've worked with PTC products for over 25 years and have been in the PTC channel for over 20 years, certified trainer and implementer of both Creo and Windchill. PDSVISION is headquartered in Stockholm, and we operate in 12 countries. We are definitely a trusted advisor of software solutions and services in the digital transformation, with over 2,500 years of combined technical experience, across all of our countries, our employees. We are one of PTC's top partner, platinum worldwide and rapidly growing partner for ANSYS. And then we, of course, have our additional applications for my PDS apps, which will, of course, increase the value of your investment. One of the ones that I have personally done is with the PDS search environment, but there are other ones, and you can see those on our website. So you can also go to pdsvision.com, and you can also see our additional my PDS applications. So what we're dealing with in this day and age, of course, is digital transformation. There are many challenges that we have, and that really works well for what we're going to go through right now, which is the PDM to PLM, because PLM is where a lot of these disconnects can be joined together. So products, once again, we are making products smarter. We connect them through the IoT, and of course fulfill regulations and build a digital twin. So with our products themselves, as I said, they are becoming smarter. Whether we're just looking at IoT or we're just building in intelligence into the models themselves, whether it's through the modeling or some of the additional applications. And then it's always important also, because of the technology that we have, we can build a digital twin. What a digital twin is simply a digital version of your actual physical product, but with all the additional analysis and IoT connections and drawings, viewables, whatever is necessary for other people to see it, not just engineering. And then, of course, we go into production, which, of course, one of the big things is to decrease manufacturing downtime, be able to predict failures, through some of the quality solutions that we have. Look at our current aging workforce, which is great. They have a lot of knowledge, but we need to be able to capture that knowledge. And through some of the technology that we have, we're able to go in and capture that. And of course, optimize the production through AI. So we all know that AI is very rapidly growing. So how do we use that to our advantage when we're building up our products? Processes, remove data silos. That's an important piece, so that instead of data being in multiple locations with different versions and people looking at different items, we want to go through and now remove that so that everybody's looking at the same information real time. Smart connected systems, also smart connected operations, and then services and operations. Then we want to increase our infrastructure by reducing non-value IT costs. Of course, a lot of people are going to cloud-based, as well as SaaS, which is software as a service. So instead of actually going in and having a downloaded version of the software, we're actually going in and using it basically from the cloud. And then, of course, data. Data is a huge piece of everything. You want to make sure you maintain your IP. So you create the value out of the data, once again, using AI, data lakes, and the analysis information. Data and cybersecurity, once again, with all the technology that we have, we still have to deal with people accessing our data. So we control that access through, different virus protection softwares, or even once again, just the applications that you use. And then of course, create new business model. As we go through and change the way that we do things, our current business model should adapt to the technology that we're now incorporating. So we can go through and build that up as well. All right, so real quickly, just want to do a quick review. We talked about what is product data management. So product data management is not a new concept. Now for this, some people may have flashbacks that they don't want to have, but hey, you can go with me on this journey. Going way back to actually designing on the drawing boards. So yes, I did actually do this. So this was part of what I did. But this is, our design team. This is our design house. We actually use drawing boards, but we still had data management. The data management was simple. It was file cabinets. So a lot of the, and just as a side note, a lot of the part numbering that we're seeing right now is actually based on some of this, is because we created smart part numbers so that we knew when we looked at a part number, it was associated with this assembly, it was associated with uh, this subcomponent or this area. So all those part numbers were smart part numbers. So it told us, hey, go to this cabinet, it's in this drawer, so on and so forth. So a lot of that kind of filtered from here. But once again, we started here. Then we did transition to CAD. So 2D wire CAD started happening. And we started into simple computers, but these computers that we used did not have a lot of storage in them. So once again, our data management ended up being floppy drives. And then moving forward, we then began to have more powerful machines. The internet came in, we had network drives, all these things started happening. So now, once again, we now have a folder structure, whether it's on that local computer or on a network drive somewhere that other people can access it. But we now began to digitally control those files. Now, there were, of course, problems that we had when it became digital. It became easy to have duplicates. So we can have a copy of it here, a copy of it there. It may have, what's the latest version? What disk is the latest version on? What folder in our structure is it on? We didn't know where the latest one was. And because of the way some of that was set up, it was easy to go through and override other people's changes. So it didn't matter what type of standard operation procedure you had, it still happened. you know, Especially when you're dealing with network drives, it was always the last one in, won. So whatever the last version was that was copied to that network drive was the one that won. So we want to go through and control that. How do we do that? We began to now implement a PDM system. So PDM is product data management. It is used for the use of software to help organize connected communication information across globally distributed teams where multiple product development tools are used. Uh, Continuing down, PDM enables controlled global collaboration, concurrent design environments for requirements to system models to design mechanical engineering, electrical and software, simulation, validation, and verification. So it guarantees that every model, drawing, and document is secure. So the answer to that question from a PTC environment was, of course, the full Windchill PDM link. So that was product data management. That was the big piece of it. And the functionality was pretty simple. It was data storage with the history. Sorry. Uh, we were able to go through and create documents and not have duplicate file numbers. All the related information, whether we're talking um, CAD data, drawings that were associated with them, no matter where they were, they maintain their association. Even if we renamed them, they maintain their association. Revision control was a big part of it. States, if you started using life cycles, you began to use states to go in and control where the data was and who had access to the data. So it was also a way of controlling uh, permissions. And to get to the different states, we were using promotions to do so, or we are using promotions to do so. So going in and making sure there are approvals happening before it goes from, in work, concept, whatever we want, to a released file. So what's that process look like? And then we use publishing tools to create those lightweight viewables. So that's where Creo View then came in. And then we were able to go through and have the non-engineering people, whether we're talking manufacturing, whether we're talking production, purchasing, whomever it may be. If they need to go through and view something, they could do it inside of Creo view. And there's multiple levels of Creo view that can be used that will give you different access. And then, of course, one of the big things with the move to CAD was multiple CAD environment. So a lot of companies did not standardize on a single um, CAD system, or if they did, they may have acquired another system or been acquired by another company that was using a different CAD system. And because of the history, it didn't make sense to move from one CAD to another. So now we have multi-CAD environments. With inside of Windchill, we have the workgroup managers that actually allow for the recognizing of CAD data from other softwares. All right, so once again, Windchill and CAD. Now we're in the move from PDM to PLM, and I'm just going to read the first part of this. PLM software. So with PTC Windchill, now we're just looking at Windchill as a whole. So if you notice with that, we're not looking at Windchill PDM link. We're just looking at Windchill as a whole. That is the governing body of everything. Um, the brand name for PTC's complete suite of product lifecycle management. The vision is to provide an end-to-end information solution for all product-related data and processes. The unique features of these products is that regardless of the type of information needed, it is stored in the same information database. So that is once again the important piece. So what we're looking at for just PDM link, we were just focusing on CAD. Now we're looking outside of that and now looking to everything within your organization being stored or linked to the Windchill environment. And that's what we're looking at here. So this is once again the Windchill solutions. So as you can see, Windchill right in the middle of everything, and then all the other add-ons or other applications that PTC has that can actually be connected, or even non-PTC data that can still be related inside of the environment. All right, so some of the challenges of moving is going in. Once again, currently a lot of things are siloed and a lot of systems are disconnected, which makes it difficult to stay current with change request issues, dependencies, and timelines. So currently that's how a lot of things are inside of our systems. So it does slow us down to go in and do it. The integration of third-party applications such as process plans, bill of materials, inventory data, uh, manufacturing data, design data, so on. Those things are also, of course, challenges that we look at, and that kind of goes back to the first bullet item, where we have a lot of disconnected systems and things being siloed. So although we have a bill of material, does that information properly propagate into our inventory system or to manufacturing? Do all those things actually communicate, or is there just simply, hey, here's an Excel spreadsheet and I type everything in each one of these areas? Complex and functional process mapping, a lot of people look at it as a complex application to go in and now to develop a PLM environment. Heavy customizations sometimes are needed, legacy data management. So if I am moving to a specific system, or if I have other data, how do I now incorporate that into my system? um, Acceptance by end users. That's always one of the biggest pieces of this, is how the users are now going to begin to adjust to the changes. And a lot of that, of course, is showing the benefit of everything that happens from that. And then, of course, people look at high licensing and maintenance costs sometimes, misalignment of business units, and of course, longer implementation time. So the benefits is, of course, we're going to go through and reduce the risk of things being out of sync. We're going to increase productivity, cost management, accelerated time to market, increase revenue, data sharing, centralization, better quality product, and of course, increase customer loyalty. So all that customer loyalty is just a summary of everything else. But once again, reduced risk. So because we have all these things interconnected, whether we're talking the design, we're talking quality, we're talking manufacturing, we're talking procurement, whatever it may be, everybody is now looking at the same information. So that's where that centralization comes in, because we have one core set of data that everybody's looking at. It increases productivity because, once again, we're not looking at old prints. We don't have to go through and look and wait for somebody else to give us information when we can access it directly. Cost management. Uh, Component reuse is a big, big, big thing. So we have multiple assemblies that use the same parts, but because they were designed by different people, they now have different part numbers. So now we're ordering or creating things that are duplicate, but we're doing them separately. So that's one area of cost management, is now we can go into the system and look and see what's in there. And then once again, use that design. Data reuse is a huge piece in anything that we do. Time to market is always faster because now we're reducing all the steps or all the processes need to be done. That of course will result in increased revenue. Data sharing is important, whether we're talking internally or with our vendors. And how do we do that? Better quality, because we now have a process. We will now have a process that incorporates all different aspects of our company. So once again, we go back to quality, looking at real-time data. We look at manufacturing, looking at real-time data. And when things get updated, we can make sure they get notification of updates. So there's a lot of things that we can go through and benefit from this. Oh, and the last thing is scaling your business. So as your business grows, the more information we want to use, the more applications make sense to go through and expand on in your PLM environment. So with this, what we can see with this move to PLM is that Windchill is focused on managing all aspects of your data from concept to retirement. Um, Product can be a CAD, but it can also be non-CAD files. Windchill can manage any file type at all. So it doesn't matter if it recognizes the native file type. So, Word, Excel files, things like that, PDFs, movie files. So if there's some off the wall type file that it doesn't recognize, it can still be recognized, or sorry, still be stored as content for a particular document file. So we may not have the application that connects to it directly, but we can still store it, maintain the revision, maintain the history of it within inside of Windchill. Windchill licensing reflects the focus on PLM from PDM. So previously, when you were buying Windchill licenses, you were buying heavy and light licenses. And the main focus on that was CAD. So heavy users were your CAD users, light users were your basically non-CAD users. But you had the inside of those licenses was the connection between Windchill and CAD. Now moving forward, the core Windchill licenses don't even include CAD anymore. They are focused on PLM. So there's multiple levels of PLM. We have our base licenses, we have our navigate licenses, all of those, but those things are focused on the PLM piece of it. If you want CAD, then you would go in and actually purchase the CAD extension. So there's actually an extension, and those who have updated their licenses recently realize that you have the base license, which is all Windchill stuff. And then, I'm sorry, yeah, the Windchill PLM piece. And then the additional, if you're doing CAD, if you're doing multi-CAD, then you're actually adding those onto your base Windchill licenses. But Windchill, of course, does include your bond management, your change management, your doc management. All of that is part of your Windchill, and you can do that stuff even without being associated with a CAD license. You're just associated with a Windchill license. But of course, with the doc management, it's directly integration as well. You have desktop integration, which will allow you to go through and work directly within Windchill. I'm sorry, within Office connected to Windchill. So you can go through and open files directly from the Windchill database without having to download them. It also includes tool, of course, that allows you to go through the entire life. So we're talking promotions, change processes, um, connections to quality, connections to manufacturing, all those things uh, can be used as well. But also keep in mind, as I mentioned before, it is still a PDM system. So you still have the ability to use it as your base PDM system as well. So moving from PLM to PDM is not a difficult thing. And that's kind of what we're going to discuss and or go through in just a moment. So, and once again, multi-CAD environment and workgroup managers are used for your multi-CAD environment. So there are two levels of those as well. So we have licenses for Creo, and then we have licenses for like SolidWorks, and don't remember, I think, and then there's a different license for like CATIA and NX. I think the SolidWorks one also has the AutoCAD Inventor add-on as well. So there are multiple ones that you can go through and buy. All right, and then once again, because we're using a workgroup manager that recognizes the native file, it will be a native file within the system. So it will recognize it as SolidWorks or NX or CATIA or whatever you have. All right, so why do you want Windchill PLM? It's a fully functional PLM system. Everything you need from a PLM environment is there. I know our mindset, because of the development of the system, our mindset has been CAD, 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 CAD. But this system is a fully functional PLM system. It is a web-based application. Once again, no local installation, of course, unless you're dealing with the CAD side of it and the non-Creo side of it, which will use a workgroup manager. It supports, as I said, the multi-CAD environment. You have file history, revision control, permissions using states and teams. And we'll look at that in just a moment. But you have your lifecycle states that not only tell us visually where it is, but it also goes in and says who has permissions. So we can go through and set those up. And to lock that on even more, if they're not associated with that particular team of that product, they don't even see it. So they don't even have access to that. Change management is a big part of it. A lot of companies have a change management process, but it may not be an electronic process. They may have something where they know that here is my ECR, and then I take that ECR and I need to take this document or email this document to whomever. I need to do a red line markup of this PDF and give it to these people to go through and actually review it, and then give it to the person that actually needs to make the change. So every company has some form of a change management process, but all of that we can go through and incorporate into Windchill as well, and automate those processes and track those processes and maintain the history of all that change data that we've used inside of Windchill. BOM creation, you have your regular engineering BOM, you have your manufacturing BOM, you have a service BOM. All those can be created as well, and those can be exported and customized. So we can go through and create those. We do have NPM link that can also be used, which is an add-on to do BOM management. A lot of different types of things with BOM management, mainly MBOMs. But so that's another add-on that can be used as well to really go through and harness the power of the manufacturing process. In our ERP integration, there is integration directly with ERP environment, or if you don't want to go through and create that integration, then we can take the BOMs that we create and simply export them in the appropriate format so that you can import them into your ERP instead of going in and typing in, looking at a drawing and now basically typing in the bill of material. So we can go through and export at least your BOM and then import it into the ERP if you don't want to do the direct integration. Ability to store and connect all products related to files, once again, CAD and non-CAD through WT parts. So we have our CAD files, whether we're talking drawings, assemblies, parts, whatever it may be, but we also have other things such as our documents that we still want to go through and say, okay, this document is associated with this CAD file. Well, there is not a direct relationship between that document and the CAD, but through the use of WT parts, we can go through and create that connection. And those are easy to create as well. Easily find files through searching instead of browsing. Just use the search functionality. When you find your WT part, that WT part has links not only to the CAD file, but to all the documents and everything else associated with it as well. Publish, markup, and view lightweight viewables with Creo View. So in your environment, once again, whether you're using Creo, SolidWorks, CATIA, NX, whatever it may be, we can go through and set up a publisher that will go through and basically publish a lightweight viewable of that file that is viewable in Creo View. So we can go through and open that up inside of there, and you can even do your markups inside of there. So instead of actually printing out a PDF, open it inside of Creo View and do your markup inside of there, and that now is stored inside of Windchill. So you don't have to worry about where that markup is. It's stored inside of the database. All right, and then this once again just kind of shows the overall solution. PLM is at the center of everything else. You can see sourcing, design, services, marketing, products, all of that feeds out of the PLM environment, and you can see all the connected areas around it that the PLM environment can help to communicate with. All right, so at this point, we're going to go ahead and jump into a demonstration. All right, so the first thing, once again, what we want to look at is, we have our common space. This is where our data is stored. So I am looking directly inside of, from Creo, I'm looking through the embedded browser, and now we can see in this folder, there's my CAD files. Pretty straightforward. Everything is there. They have the lightweight viewables that are there that we can go through and see as necessary. If we want to go through and look a little bit deeper, I can go to the information page, go into the structure, and then the structure is going to simply show me my structure. And there you once again have your visual of that as well. And as you go through and select over here, you can see they highlight over on the right side. So this is once again just your core data management. So I'm going to take this file, I'm going to go ahead and add it to my workspace. I want to go through and just confirm, yep, it's bringing in all of those. If I wanted the drawings, I could select it and say, hey, collect all the drawings associated with these as well. And it'll go through and add any drawings that were associated with any of those CAD files. That sounds good. Go ahead and say okay. Now I'm in my workspace, and now I can go through and I'm just going to do something, just day-to-day operation. So I'm going to open up the assembly, and I'm going to go ahead and open up this individual part, and we can come in here, and there's a radius here. I want to go through and change. Once again, this is our process. So this is the PDM piece of it, where we want to make sure that people recognize who has control of what files. So, or that you properly note that you're controlling this file. So I'm going to go ahead with this. Okay, it's saying I don't have this checked out, which means I don't have permission on it. I'm sorry, I don't have control of it. So I can now go in and say check out now, so that I now have control of this file. We can get into all the details of that a little bit later. All right, and now I have this, and I'm just going to change this to 0.11, and it didn't like it. Oh my goodness. I did not realize it was this version. Same thing, people may be having flashbacks. This is an older file in an older version of Creo. I'm sorry, of Pro E. So people may be having flashbacks at this point. I apologize for that. But basically, we go through and make that change, save it. And now once we go back, I'm going to close this and this. Once again, all I'm doing is just going through and just showing a quick change. So this is PDM. Go through, change it, I'm done with it. Once I'm done and I want everybody else to see it, I check it back in. Looks great. I'll just say updated radius. And then finish. And check the file in. So now we just have that file. It's just been updated. You can see the updated date of that particular file. This file is also being sent to the publisher to go through and create its viewable as well. So once again, PDM, pretty simple. It's just simply data storage. That's what we're looking at. It's going in and managing the data. But what we also want to look at is now, how do we take our PDM and we expand it into PLM? Well, one of the things inside of Windchill that really, really drives PLM functionality is our WT parts. So at this point, that is one of the, anytime you're going to make that transition from PDM to PLM, WT parts need to be turned on. So you can go through and turn it on so they're automatically created when you check them in. Or like this here, I can take this particular file here and say, okay, I want to come through and I want to now do my auto associate. What that means is it's going to go and check all these files that I have highlighted, and it's going to create WT parts for them if they do not exist. So right now we are just looking at our CAD file, and I go in and I do an auto associate, and I'm once again in my workspace. Now when I do an auto associate, what I notice is that they already have WT part files, but I did not see them when I was looking inside of my current folder. And the reason is because the WT part files are actually one level up at the demo data set. Okay, great. Now, how else could I find that? Is if I went into this file here and I go to my common space, and if I looked at related objects, there's a WT part file right there. It also shows any type of references that were made. So there's that there. So if I go into this file and look at this structure, there's my EBOM. And as you can see, it's duplicating what we have here. Now, because this one is already done, then I want to go through and create another set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these, and I'm going to do a file, save as, to go in and duplicate it. So to make this really simple for myself, I'm going to highlight everything. I'm going to go through and change the name. So the number is going to be auto created. You can change that if you want to. I'm going to go in and change the name. So where it says star.star, which is the name, I'm going to just go in and put MD Webberly or MDW. So that's now going to be added to the extension. So you can put in there whatever you want. So now all of these will now have different names and file names. The numbers, once again, are going to be auto-generated. So it's going to be the actual part numbering, and that's something else that we can look at from a PLM standpoint, is that a lot of companies have different ways to go through and create their numbering. Some people use their ERP and they collect numbers and then assign them inside of Windchill when they're creating the files. That's something we can do here. So we can go through and set it up. Okay, every CAD file that we create, every WT part file that we create are going to have this many characters. And it's going to start at this number and it's going to increment by this number. So that's one way, of course, of making sure that the numbers are never duplicated, is because it just continues to move forward in that numbering scheme. It will never create a number backwards. So it will only move forward when it goes in and creates those numbers. So once again, that's one way of going in and making sure that we don't duplicate numbers. So, all right, so here is those files that I just copied, and I'm going to go ahead and finish that. And this is once again just here inside of my workspace. And there you can see them. Now, if I look at any of these, let's go to the assembly. You can see that it still has relationships with the CAD file, but you can see there's nothing associated with the WT part file. So when I created that copy, it went in and removed that relationship because that WT part file is only associated with that particular CAD file. So what do we want to do? We want to come over here, and I'm going to select all of my new files. And then I'll go File, New, and I'm actually not going to do them all because I want some of them to be created when I check in. So let's just do a few of them this way. We'll go here, and I'll do Edit, Auto Associate, and you can see these WT part files that it's going to create are all going to be new. So it's giving them all new numbers, and right now it's setting them at the same location that I copied this to, which is just the data set. I didn't move anything. Great, great, great. Finish, and there they are as well. So now what I want to do is I want to begin the check-in process of this. So once again, this is a simple way of beginning the transition from CAD to PLM. I'm sorry, from PDM to PLM. So at this point, I'll go ahead and do my check-in. And as you can see, it's checking in all the objects. Some of them have WT parts, some of them do not. Yep. Next. Now, for anything that does not have a WT part, it's going to go through and auto associate. What this means, and this is, I would definitely recommend turning this on because that way you don't have to think about creating them. It does it for you. So as you're going in and checking in a file, it's going to do an auto associate. What is it going to do is as you check it in, it's going to check and see if the CAD file that you're checking in already has a WT part file. If it does, it just maintains that connection and updates the iteration. If it does not, then what it's going to do is going to create a WT part for you. And then you don't have to worry about it. It's already there. Now, what a lot of people, I won't say a lot of people, what some people did not want is they did not want when they're looking in the folders, go back one. They didn't want to see the WT parts and the CAD files just because it can get confusing, it can be complex. Well, you can always create a subfolder for parts and then create a rule in your object initialization to go through and all your WT parts go to whatever the product name is / parts. So that anytime a WT part is created, no matter what method, it automatically goes to that subfolder. So then that way you can go through and separate your CAD files and your WT part files from each other. So that's also a method to do it as well. So like I said, at this point, we're there. So when I go in and once again look at this CAD file, there's everything, and there's its WT part file. Now, one of the other things that we can look at is when we're going in and creating this information, how do we now relate other things? So we talked about the disconnect between CAD files and the document files that we may have. Well, one way to go through and resolve that is if we look at this subfolder underneath here, we have documents. But when we look at these documents and we look at its related objects, they're not related to anything at the moment. So what we want to do is we want to take these documents and relate them to the same WT part files that we had for the CAD. So I'll come over here and once again look at the assembly for the WT part file. When I look at the related objects, once again, there are no files. So what I want to do is I want to come over here. I can create a describe by document or I can create reference document. Describe by is simply describing the overall product. Reference documents may just be informational items that we can go through and create. So from here, I can do an add, which will go through and add existing files, or I can come over here or either one of them and do a new. If I'm doing new, that means I'm pulling the files off of my hard drive and now bringing them into Windchill. So we don't actually have the document inside of Windchill yet. We simply have the, we just have the WT part. So we haven't actually input the data into Windchill. So let me go back here, make sure I know what I'm looking for. All right, and then go back to my WT part to here, and I'm going to come over here and add an existing file. And once again, because you're making a modification to it, it's making sure that you take control of the file. So that's what it's telling me here. Part will be checked out. Great, I need that. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the owner's manual. So I have the number for that, and I'm going to type in 11911. And there it is. So I'm going to select that, and now that gets attached to this WT part file as a describe by document. And then I have additional documents I want to go through and add as reference documents. So those are, there's a warranty that I want to add. Did I not type that in right? No. 11913. Oh, wait a minute. No wildcard. Interesting. I'm looking at it. Let's try again. 11912. Oh, nope. I'm sorry. My apologies. I just realized. So that's the other thing just to keep in mind. So reference documents is an actual type. Sorry, that's why it's not showing up. So when you create an actual document, you can create a document that is a reference document type. That's why nothing's showing up, is because all of my documents are just standard documents. So I need to add my files up here. So I apologize. That's why it wasn't showing up. And 11913, or maybe it's not why it wasn't showing up. Wildcard. There we go. Add that. And I'm going to add one more. And once again, these are existing files. So I'm going to go in and add this one, which is 11914. And this one's a little bit different because for those of you that have or may not have created documents, this one's a little bit different because this document here, when you look at it, is actually a link. So it's a URL. So we can have documents that actually have content, but we can also have documents that are links to a web page. So we can go through and do that as well. But what we're doing, by doing what we're doing, we're now able to go through and say, hey, I want to go through and I want to find this tub. So I'm going to go in and do a tub. And it's showing, oh, it's doing tubes. I guess I should be more specific when I do that. Edit my search criteria, get rid of that, add my parts, search. Hey, you gotta think about that before you do some of that stuff. So I'm gonna do a foot bath, star foot underscore bath. All right. So what that does is it goes through and it finds there's the CAD file. So I can go through and select on that. And once again, the details, because it's a CAD file, there's a viewable, there's the structure, but the other thing that I'm looking for is a WT part. So when I find the WT part, now not only do I find the CAD file, but I also, oh, sorry, that's why it's not finding it. I also find the documents associated with it. I needed the foot bath MDW. So once you find that, then it goes through and now it has a link. So if I need to see, oh, here's this CAD file, but what were the FEA results? What are the owner's manuals? What are the warranties? What are the whatever other type of document that you want to go through and associated with it, we can simply go in and find that. So once again, that now gives access to anyone that can go in and actually view this information, which now brings me to another piece of this. So not only are we looking at bringing in the CAD data, we can still also go through, and I'll go ahead and check this in. Not only are we looking at the CAD data itself, but we're also looking at who can access this CAD data. So when I come down here and I have an additional user, which is purchasing, and purchasing goes to that same location to go through and view data, which is the demo sets data, you can see that it actually sees nothing. But when I come back to the actual location of demo sets, there's a lot of stuff here. But the reason they don't see anything is that purchasing, although they're a part of the team, they only have access to items that are at the released state. So currently, there's nothing in that location that is released. But if we go in a little bit deeper, hey, there's those CAD files that are currently at the release state. Go into documents, doesn't show any documents because once again, the documents are not at a release state. So that's one way of going into controlling who can access the data. Now they can come through and do it this way, but there's also another method that I mentioned just a moment ago. Sure, we can search here, but we also have our PDS search environment here. So with that, I can go through and do my foot bath, but if you notice, it's finding the CAD file. For those that aren't familiar with the PDS search, it's actually searching for the WT part information. So that's where all of the data is linked, is through that PDM, PDS search. I'm sorry, through the WT part functions. So although I find it and I search, there's nothing that is actually going to go through and give me other than the viewable for that assembly. But there's other data. So what we want to do is we want to take, this assembly, and I'm going back to CAD, and I want to go in and take all of these WT parts, and I want to promote them. So that's these items here. And this is another one of those functions where we can go through and actually control who actually does what. So I can come over here and I'm going to do this one pretty simply just for demonstration. I'm going to say each one of those, if you have the appropriate permission, can go through and do a set state. And what we're saying is that all these items, we want to go ahead and just have them catch up to the actual CAD file. So I'm going to select those and say that the target state is going to be released. Say OK. Now I'm only doing that is because the CAD files have already been released, so we don't have to go through that approval process because they already work. So now when I go back in and I look at that same information from here and I do that foot bath, now you see the WT part file. So the permissions that you have in Windchill simply carry over to this PDS search. There's nothing that it actually overrides. So now I want to go through and say, okay, for that, show me any step file, any DXF file that may be associated with it. There we have that same viewable, but I don't just want it for this assembly. I want it to actually show me any of this information for the entire structure. So now when I do my search, it's going to search the structure underneath this assembly to find any DXF files, any step files, any drawings. So you have the drawing, there's a PDS version of it. There are all the step files that it also goes through and saves. So for the non-engineering piece of this, we can go through, export the BOM from here. We can go through and now package all this together and now send this package of step files or PDF files, whatever it may be, to our vendors. So we can use that to do it as well. Or once again, if I go into here, still inside of Windchill, where is my assembly? Oh, I moved it up. Yeah. If I still go into here, then I'm still able to go into my structure and I can export from here. So there's a different formats that I referred to that we can go through and use. And we are kind of running short, almost at the bottom of the hour. So the other thing, because this is once again a PLM centric environment, one of the other things that we want to look at is also using it as PLM. Everything I showed you was inside of Creo. So let's just say you're not a Creo user, but you still want to do some BOM management. So one of the things that we can do is actually create BOMs without CAD. So we have the ability really simply to go through and create new parts. So those WT parts, we can go through and create them. or we can go through and import a structure. Easiest way to import a structure and have it the proper format is to take an existing structure and export it out. So we can go through, and I'm just going to select on this. One of the items that it gives us when we're doing our export is we can export it as an importable spreadsheet. What that does is it goes in and makes sure that all the columns and all the information that it needs to re-import it are there. So I actually already have a document for this that I'm going to go through and use. And that document is this one. So I'll just open it up so you can see it. So it has two tabs that it gives me. It gives me the WT part sheet, which has all the WT parts as they are. So I can go through and change the numbers on them, change the names. If I wanted to be an end item, and I'll look at that right before we end. Organization, the location that you want it in, so on and so forth. So any of those attributes / parameters that we want to go through and change, we can do that here. We also have the BOM tab, which is now the actual structure. So this numbering will more than likely be different. So we want to make sure that we update the numbers appropriately because it's doing it as a BOM structure, not just part numbers. But we want to make sure these are updated as well. And then once again, where they're going to go. So with that, to go in and create this, once again, non-CAD centric BOM, we just come in here and inside of the top level of that product, we can go into details and there's simple action to go in and say import from spreadsheet. That now goes in and gives us the ability to go in and find that file or drag and drop the file, whatever it is. Just take it here, drag and drop it. It's there. Now what we wanted to do, we want to go through and validate that everything is in there appropriately. So validate the spreadsheet. If there are any errors, it will give it to me here. If not, I can select next, goes in and gives me a general preview that is going to import that structure. And I'll just say finish. All right. And then from there, we can then see here is all of the new files. So these just got imported. Now, if I want to easily find this BOM structure, it's one other thing I want to show you, and that is the foot bath itself. I can go through and designate this as an end item. What that does is says this is a deliverable inside of this product. So I'm going to come over here and say edit common attributes. And I'm going to go in and say, yes, this is an end item. You don't need to make everything an end item. You don't need to make all your assemblies an end item. A lot of times this is simply the top level that we're going in and specifying. So I'm going to say yes to an end item. What that does is that when I go back into this top level again, that is now listed underneath here. So now if I need to easily get to that structure, I don't have to go through the browse and all the other stuff. I can just go into the product, find it, and now goes to the information. There's the structure. Now, once again, as I mentioned, this has no CAD associated with it, but I can go through and begin to add documents to it or whatever, and take this through change management. So I'm going to go directly to a change notice. And one of the things that we want to do with the change notice, or that we can do, is when we're in here, one of the things that is important is when we go through and define everything, we can define what is the intent of this, what is the disposition of all the items that are currently listed, and we can also go through and specify effectivity, which I think is going to be down here. Yeah, we can go through and set the effectivity of these items as well. So when does this now become effective? So when we're searching for our BOM, we may be creating a whole new structure, but it's not going to be an active structure until the 1st of July. So we can still do that. So these are other elements that we can go through and use as we're transitioning into the PLM. But there's a lot of tools that we can go through and use in the PLM environment to go through and move forward. But like I said, it's not a difficult transition. It's just simply going in and turning on things and then beginning to use some of the tools that are inside of the environment. All right. Um, if there are any questions or any additional questions, I do see a couple inside of there, inside of the question dialog box. You can ask them now. Um, so one of the questions, I'll go to the first one that's there, maybe off topic, but do you recommend calculated links with a WT part and drawing over content? So the calculated link is a default link. And yes, I do recommend that because it's simply saying that the reason this drawing is associated to this WT part is because of the model that's on the drawing. So if the model is no longer associated with WT part, we want to also remove the drawing from being associated with that WT part. So yes, I do definitely recommend maintaining those calculated links because it's simply saying this is related because something else is related. So once that relationship moves, it goes away. Next one, sometime the 3D assembly has a 3D part that has the same number legacy files. How would you associate the WT part since it will try to create two identical numbers? So with the numbering, we would have to go in and look at that. Even if it's a legacy file, um, Windchill still will just recognize the one. I don't know if you're talking about a file type. So if it's a Creo file and a SolidWorks file, and they happen to have the same number, you're saying if it goes in, how would it go through and handle that? If it has those numbers, that's actually, if that's your question, that's actually a good question. I'm not sure. If it's a multi-CAD environment and they happen to have the same part number, how does it associate the appropriate WT part file? Good question. I would have to look into that one. I'm not sure. Next, how would you handle a BOM that's the same component but needs to have part with a different color depending upon the customer? Example, we need two BOMs with two customers, one with red, one with green. Are they the same in CAD? They can be, yes. They can be the same because I guess technically, I guess it depends on what the process is in the design. Is it actually, although it's painted differently, does the number in engineering or in the design, is that different? Or is the paint a manufacturing operation? So they have the base CAD file or the actual part file, and from there, does manufacturing now control the color, be depending upon where it is? So it may not be a CAD centric item, it may be a manufacturing that because of this BOM for this customer, here's this paint. For this BOM for this customer, here's this paint. But the CAD or the main part file is still a single part file. So I guess it depends on how that is governed. But if they're two different part numbers, then there's no big issue because two different part numbers are going to create two different WT parts. But if the CAD is the same, then it may more than likely be that that is a manufacturing operation. Or there's also an option for a gathering part, which may just be all of the different types of paint, and you just pick from that gathering part which one of those you want. Uh, will the presentation be shared? Yes, the presentation will be shared. So you will get a link to this once it's available. You will get a link to this, and the 3D assembly and the 3D part have the same number in Windchill. It still sees them differently. Because what it's going to do it's going to add, so if you're not doing auto numbering will avoid this, but we're manually putting in the assembly and part numbers. So if we're manually putting those in there, then what it's going to do for the number is going to use the .asm or the .prt, if I'm not mistaken. I know that's what it's done in the past, is it actually added that extension to that number. So they were unique in that manner. But if you're just using auto numbering, then of course that's not necessarily an issue because they won't be the same. But the manual, I think that's where those came in. So I think it added the extension on. All right. Does anyone else have any additional questions? All right. If that's the case, then thank you all for your time. And I hope this was informative. And if you have any questions, definitely feel free to reach out as you normally would. Here's my information. So once again, Michael Wimberly at PDSVISION.com. And then, of course, if any information that you want on us, go to our website, PDSVISION.com. Any videos that we've had in the past, definitely go through and look at those as well. On YouTube, do a search on PDS Vision, and you'll find that information as well. So once again, thank you for your time, and we'll see you on the next webinar.